What's up, you guys, and welcome to the Prime Vanguard channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about something that I'm interested in speaking to you about for a while, and that is going to be a new perspective on the set 2 for D format of Overdress. Now, for Cardfight Vanguard Overdress, we are entering into our second booster set for the entire game. At the time I'm recording this video, it is July 1st, meaning that we are only 3 weeks away from the introduction of A Brush with Legends. Now, with the Brush with Legends, we've got all the cards released for it in Japanese. You can check out the Cardfight fandom wikia to get the English translation of all these cards, and I'll put that in the description below so you guys understand what's going on. And for this video, I'm going to go ahead and talk about my thoughts and opinions on some of these cards that I highlighted in notices that are going to be great for the Magnolia deck, and my thoughts and opinions on what these cards are going to do for the deck and how it'll affect future play for Magnolia. Now, it's very important to note that this isn't some set review. I'm not going to be talking about every single Stoicheia card revealed into the second set for Magnolia or just Stoicheia in general. If you guys want a video like that, please go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below and I'll think about doing it. But I really just want to talk about Magnolia because I'm a Magnolia main, so of course I want to talk about like the deck that I care about the most because that's what I play, like, obviously. But without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hop right into the video, and for the format of this video, I'm going to be explaining my thoughts and opinions of the cards. I'm going to go ahead and put up slideshows of the cards and their effects. So without further ado, you guys, let's go ahead and hop right into this video. Alright, you guys, so for our very first card from the set, we have the Wild Intelligence Order card. Now, this order card is an extremely popular one and has really changed the game for Magnolia in a big way. Wild Intelligence has the following effect. It is a normal order card, and it goes as, once per turn, you may play this card with a counterblast of 1. You discard 3 cards from the top of your deck and choose up to 1 card with the same grade as your Vanguard or lower from your drop and call it to the rearguard circle. If your Vanguard is Sylvanhorn Beast King Magnolia, choose up to 2 cards instead of 1. Having a card like this is an extremely big deal because you're building up the board for Magnolia, and if you're playing any cards like Tearful Malice, or you didn't choose to play the Magical Magnolia where you can't build up as board as much because you're relying on order cards to get your resources, then this card is extremely amazing to have. I think that this card is going to be a staple in Magnolia. I can see this being a 2 to 3 of, as no matter what variation of Magnolia you play, whether it be the Beast King Magnolia or Magical Magnolia, having this card to generate your board for you to get more resources and free advantage is going to be really spectacular for the deck. So this card is most definitely a staple of Magnolia. No matter how many you play, I can see everybody playing this. And for my second card for this review of Magnolia, I'm going to be talking about Deep Emotion Maiden Ursula. She was a promo card released for Bushiroad, and now she's going to be in the set, and she has the following skills and effect. Continuous on the rearguard circle. When you would exchange or move rear guards during the main phase, you may also move them along rows. Continuous on the rearguard circle. Your units in the front of this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's effect. So essentially what this card does, this allows any of your rear guards that are near her, or I believe that are, yeah, it's during the main phase, my bad. Any rear guards that pretty much are in play while this card is on the board, you can exchange them between rows and columns, meaning that you can move them up and down and now left and right. You still can't move them diagonally, but that would be cool if she pretty much said rearrange your rear guards anywhere, considering the fact that Magnolia is more of a board manipulation deck. You really do want to make sure that you're calling your pieces to the right areas because you are going to want some of your cards to be in the front row for attacks, and because Magnolia grants attacks to the back row, it is important to make sure that your back row attackers are the right ones that you want. This card pretty much fixes that issue because you can place her in a column where you have 1 card that you want in the back row and switch them out, or you can have that card that's in front of this card move it into a different row instead. The column, the placement of this card doesn't matter, it's just making sure that other placements of other cards you have is important. Her second ability is great as well, as this card pretty much gives the can't be targeted by card effects to the unit that's in front of it, and this is a big deal in case decks like Prison, because Prison got a lot of amazing cards. Like Prison is going to be like a big deal, or if any other decks that rely on retire such as Eugene or Virina want to pop any of your big units that are going to be in the front row, then this card pretty much protects them. So depending on how big Prison gets, I can see this card being played. My only problem with Ursula is that, or Urla, however you want to pronounce it, is that this card is a really good card, but it doesn't feel like it does enough. And remember that in Overdress, you only have 27 slots of free deck available because you have your 4 for ride deck, your triggers. So you have to be very picky with where you're gonna put good cards like this. And I just don't see in a Magnolia deck where you're gonna make space for this card. I'm not saying it's a bad card, but I just don't think that we have space for it right now. So unfortunately, I don't see this card being played as much unless Prison or a bigger control deck pops up out of nowhere, and then you have to, you know, play cards like this to protect your key units that you're gonna have in the front row. But with Magnolia, I don't see why that would matter anyway, because you could just put your important cards in the back row and they'd still be viable. And now on for our third card from this set. The other card is a card that only I really want to talk about, but I don't see it being like a big deal in Magnolia, and that's Coffin Shooting. Now, Coffin Shooting is another card in the Brush with Legend, and it has the following effect. So its ability is an act. In the drop zone, you may Soul Blast 1, bind an order card in your drop zone, and call this card to an open rearguard circle. Now, most of you are probably thinking, well, why are we talking about this card? This card requires orders, and you know, Magnolia doesn't, although Magnolia plays orders, not playing that much, this seems like a Zorga card. And I would agree with you, but this is where it kind of like, I have to, you know, consider something like this, because in my variation of Magnolia, when I play the deck, I played this card along with a card called, I played a card called Tearful Malice, and Tearful Malice is a resource management card for Stoicheia where you blow up 2 of your units, you draw a card, soul charge, and counter charge. And pretty much this card can become a free retire target, so if we ever get better cards in the future that force us to retire our rear guards, get more advantage, such as Tearful Malice, then this Coffin Shooting pretty much becomes a free card to do that. For my fourth card for the set 2 review, I'm going to be speaking about a card that's actually a personal favorite of mine, Sylvanhorn Beast Bortle Corn. Sylvanhorn Beast Bortle Corn has the following effect. It states, act on the rearguard circle, you may counterblast 1, and until the end of the turn, this unit gets continuous on the back row rearguard circle. When this unit would attack, this unit battles all of your opponent's front row units. Now, Bortle Corn is a tech option for Magnolia, and I really do like this card a lot because this is our sort of board removal for the deck. If our opponent relies on their front row cards to get their advantage or get extra benefits or bonuses, and they have key pieces they want to keep, sort of like Virina, then you can draw Bortle Corn and you can pretty much have them battle the entire front row. And if your opponent really cares about their Virina, or if they don't have the maybe specific pieces to get their Virina back later in the game, then Bortle Corn will pretty much knock out their entire front row. And the cool thing about this card is the fact that it costs a counterblast, and Magnolia doesn't care about counterblast so much as it does Soul Blast. So Bortle Corn is definitely a tech option. I can see a lot of Magnolia players not playing this because you're just gonna go for a lot of resource cards and other speed card strategies. And with the new release of some other cards, I can see the deck space getting really, really tight. But if you just want to have a Bortle Corn in the deck and play maybe like a 1 or 2 of, then I definitely could see this card being a 1 or 2 of in the deck that you consider. And on for my favorite card of the entire set, and a really big deal for Magnolia and just being a staple alone, we have Sylvanhorn Beast Daimonaru. Now, Sylvanhorn Beast Daimonaru has the following effect. It reads as, auto on the rearguard circle. When this unit is placed, if you have a Vanguard with Sylvanhorn Beast King Magnolia, you may Soul Blast 1 and choose one of your rear guards, and until the end of the turn, that unit can attack from the back row and gets power plus 5,000. When this unit is chosen by your Vanguard's effect, its second auto rearguard circle ability, once per turn, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until the end of the turn. This card is huge, and the first effect alone makes it an automatic staple of Magnolia, but what really sets this card like as a big deal is that allowing the other unit on place to attack. Because now, thanks to this card, you call this card out, and with Magnolia's Counterblast, you essentially give 2 attacks to your back row on top of the 2 that you already have, the 3 that you have up front with Magnolia. So you get 5 attacks in a turn with this card alone. If you have the Persona riding, then yes, the first effect of this card doesn't matter as much. It's really just a small power up for a Soul Blast. But this card becomes a staple because obviously if you're going first with Magnolia, you want to be as aggressive as possible, being get the grade 3 first, you want to get the extra attacks first, and then you want the 1 counterblast extra attack because Magnolia is really cheap. And just having all that is a really big deal for the deck. So Daimanaru is an automatic 4 of in Magnolia. I really don't think you're going to be able to play Magnolia after set 2 without Daimanaru. You need 4 copies of this card, and this is going to be one of your key staples. So I think that until we find something better or get something better than Daimanaru, then this is an automatic 4 of the deck that you're going to have to play for competitive Magnolia play. There are some key cards I want to talk about after speaking about Daimanaru are cards such as Shoulderfish Dragon. Now, this card has the following effect. It reads as Vanguard to rearguard circle. If you did not call a rearguard from other than hand this turn, this unit cannot attack. Now, this card obviously has an attack restriction, but we really only care about its number. It's an 18k base grade 3. And remember that Magnolia will give 5k, Daimanaru will give 5k, and then if you use a card like the grade 2 revival unit from, I forgot what her name was, but if you play that card, you can pretty much bring this card back and become 5k. It pretty much gets past 1 defensive trigger, and that's really good for Magnolia because in the Magnolia deck, you really get away with a lot of poking attacks just because you generate so many versus extra attacks. So having this card is something that you consider in playing in the deck because having a way to call this card out or be able to get past its restriction if you can do it consistently means that you're going to have an 18k attacker on the field, and if you target this card with Magnolia's effect, you become 23k very often. Now, my only problem with this card is the fact that you're not going to want to always target this card for Magnolia, and if you don't have Daimanaru, then you can't target that card either. So you might have to keep this up in the front row, but that's the cool thing about these cards because they work good in the front row and the back row unless they're back row specific. But the fact that Stoy K has access to a card like this is extremely good. The same thing for Shoulderfish Dragon. There was a grade 1 that pretty much does the same thing. It's a 11k attacker. You don't really care about that card because if you got the Festival Collection grade 1, that's a 15k unit that can attack from the back row as long as it's behind the Vanguard. That card's 15k and it's a grade 1, so it's automatically better than the other grade 1. And then there was a grade 2 that gets 5k for every other rearguard you have for a Soul Blast of 2. Too expensive, we don't care about that card, it's not going to be played. Then there was the Sylvanhorn Beast grade 1 that you Soul Blast 1, you pop it, you do it's pretty much a wild intelligence without the Magnolia cost, but it's a Soul Blast of 1. And remember, Soul is very important in this deck, so we can't all the way give it up. So unfortunately, that card won't see play either. But speaking of Soul, we did get a card in this set that actually helps with that. So I'm going to go ahead and showcase you guys the grade 3 that fixes this issue, and that card is Sylvanhorn Beast Ilyata. Now Ilyata has the following effect. Ilyata's effect reads, auto rearguard circle. When this unit attacks, if 2 or more units are in front of this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of that battle, and if there are 3 or more, soul charge 1. Now this card's effect might be a little confusing, but basically what it means is the fact that if this card is, you want it in the back row, if this card's in the back row and there's 2 units in front of it, that means that you get the 5,000 power. So this card is talking about columns. And if there's 2 other units in front of it, 3 units, then you get the soul charge of 1. So this card is actually, I'm a little iffy on this card, but this card is the resource management that I've been searching for Magnolia, allowing you to get some soul back in the deck, so that this way you can hopefully be able to use the soul and pay the cost of your skills and just get better resource management cards in general. I think that where this card is going to shine the most is behind the Vanguard circle with Magnolia, because that is your Vanguard and then your opponent's Vanguard, so it's automatically 2, meaning that this card automatically becomes an 18k attacker just like Shoulderfish Dragon, and it doesn't have any cost. And then if your opponent has a booster behind their Vanguard, that's the 3, so you get the soul charge of 1. So this card is good. Really where it shines the fact that it's meant to be a back row attacker. They should just, it didn't really matter, but it's meant to be a back row attacker that you place behind in any column, and then you attack with it. You get the soul charge of 1 because the effect is when it attacks, and that's how you get some of your soul back. I think that this is a card that some Magnolia players are going to go ahead and just pick up. They might pick up like 2 copies. I would say that 3 is a little clunky, but they might pick up like 1 to 3 copies of this card just because it's some form of resource management in the deck, and a lot of Magnolia players haven't picked up on Tearful Malice yet, so therefore they're going to look for whatever they can to keep their resource game going strong. I like this card, I just don't know how I feel about it yet. If you play this grade 3, it does prevent you from playing some other cards like that grade 1 from Festival Collection, because you're going to want this card, you're going to call this card out to a column that is going to have the 3 units. It's going to be your unit, It's going to be the other 2 from the opponent's unit. So therefore, this placement of this card is going to matter, and it's something that your opponent might consider if they want you to resource manage. And if you play this card with Urgula, you don't have to worry about that because then you can put it anywhere you want to, but that's just something to consider. So this card definitely works well with the other grade 1 that I was talking about, Deep Emotion Maiden Urgula, but it also works as a back row attacker. It works with Fruitful Season, it works with Daimonaru, so at least it works good with one of your staple cards is the point. But I don't know how I feel about playing this card yet. I think personally I'm only going to play maybe like 2 or 3 of this just because, again, the deck space is already very tight for Overdress decks, so that is something you have to consider. And then finally, for my personal highlight of the deck, this was something that I noticed after watching a WCC video and checking out some of the Magnolia decks that have been playing after the release of this set. It is the order card called Regurgitation from the Underworld. Now, this is an order card that has the following effect. It reads as, you play this with 1 Counterblast and 1 Soul Blast. You choose one of any player's rear guards and retire it. Choose up to 1 card with the same grade as that card from your drop zone and call it to the rear guard circle. The second part I'm not going to read because it doesn't matter. It basically is if you had Alchemage, you get to choose up to 2 instead of 1 to call. But what this card essentially is it lets you pop one of your opponent's units to get something on your field. And this is a card that I do want to consider because although it does cost a Soul Blast, you bring a card back, so it's no different than that 1 grade 2 we already play for set 1 of Magnolia. What's the card? It's that grade 2 that I can't remember. Elenia. Okay, so this is basically a grade 3 version of Elenia, but instead of giving power, you're just going to pop something instead. So depending on how you want to play your variation of Magnolia, you might just give Elenia in general and just play this instead. I actually like this card for Magical Magnolia better than Beast King Magnolia because it is an order, meaning you have more targets for your Rancor Chain and your Tear Husk Dragon than you do for Beast King Magnolia, which you already play Elenia to cover that issue and get more power for. But this is just a card I wanted y'all to keep in the back of your minds because having a card to pop one of your opponent's units, and again, depending on how Overdress goes and how piece reliant the deck ends up becoming for other decks specifically, then having a card like this in your back pocket is extremely helpful to have. And that's it, you guys. There's nothing too much else to talk about for set 2 of Stoicheia. I'm looking at all the other cards now and I don't see anything that I really want to talk about. I already spoken about some other important, not really important, but I spoke about some of the other common cards you can consider for Magnolia. I don't think that those cards that I spoke of are good at all. I think that the main ones that I spoke about and I showed pictures for in the video that I really talked about are going to be the main cards you're going to have to think and consider about when you're building up your Magnolia deck. But we're only 3 weeks away from the second set, so go ahead and just process and take in this information. Just consider for you Magnolia players out there. For you guys that don't play Magnolia, just be aware of these cards when you guys do play against Magnolia because these are some cards that these Magnolia players are going to be testing out for their decks and so forth. But that's all for today, you guys. I have a lot more videos like this coming out. I really do enjoy making more discussion content because it gives me a chance to really talk to you guys and just give my feelings about Vanguard and so forth. So stay tuned for more of these videos. By the way, I am posting daily now, so I got a lot of content for you guys to check out soon. So that's all for today. Peace.